Welcome into the Warchant.com report. I'm Jeff Cameron alongside Ira Schoffel and Gene Williams. They're with Warchant. I'm with ESPN. It's great to be with you. Florida State moves to 3-2 with the big win, comeback win on the road against Louisville. Next up, Miami. If you're not going down to Miami for that football game, it's at 3:30 on ABC. And so it is that Florida State does get their first conference win under Willie Taggart. And Gene, I'll start with you. How much stock do you put in FSU pulling off the comeback victory there? Certainly showed a lot of guts in getting, making winning plays in the fourth quarter when you had to have it.
I think the fact that you were able to come from behind and win a game, albeit against a really ugly team, is more important than really what we saw on the field. Because this team, let's face it, they've kind of had a losing mentality the last couple of years. They've lost so many games that they had a chance to win at the end, they let slip away. So for them to kind of be in the other side of it and be able to come from behind, I think it gives them a little confidence of players. It helps because it may instill some confidence in the coaching staff in this system. And we see it as media, and I'm sure as fans see it, you start to doubt the coaching staff, the system. Is this really going to work? This isn't there. So I think for those players, most important to have a little bit of confidence in that, I think is really big from that perspective. On the field, the one positive I'll take from that is the pass protection. I couldn't believe that stat when I saw that in ACC games, the first time Florida State has not given up a sack since that 2014 ACC championship game against Georgia Tech. So really good there. If they can continue to do that, especially this weekend, that bodes very well for the future.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be able to continue to do that, but certainly anytime you go into a game, you don't give up a sack, and that's really the bugaboo of this team is the offensive line. You got to be encouraged, buoyed by that. Landon Dickerson makes a very big difference on this offensive line. I think that is abundantly clear. What do they got to have happen over the next 7 games to continue this forward progress and maybe find a way to fight into bowl eligibility?
I do think the offensive line's been a big improvement. I think that's going to continue. I don't know that they're going to go giving up no sacks in games, but I do think they're going to be much more competent than what we've seen in the early part of the schedule. I think the two things you really want to see, number one, offensively, you got to get some big runs. This is not going to be a running game where you're getting 4, 5, 6, 7 yards a carry. It's not going to be a consistent running game, but you've got to pop 1 or 2 big ones a game. They haven't had just that one big, easy 60-yard run where you hit it and you're gone. They haven't had any of those plays. The running game has been such a grind because of that. So I think Cam Akers, maybe Grant, the young kids, somebody's got to break a play in the running game. The other thing is the defense has got to convert on some of these opportunities for big plays. They've gotten a lot of pressure on the quarterback. They've forced some fumbles. They have not recovered any of them. They don't have a lot of interceptions. They've got to make some plays where they score or set the offense up with a short field, because this offense is not going to drive the ball 70, 80 yards consistently. They've got to get some cheapies, either from a big run or something on defense, to just get some points on the board where you don't have to grind it out.
Well, certainly in a game like this, that would be true, that you need to get a little bit of help in from Miami. Hopefully, if you're able to get pressure on N'Kosi Perry, you can perhaps cause that turnover that you're talking about. But one thing I would caution against, and I'll ask you about this, Gene, look, there are offensive shortcomings. You have to understand there are going to be offensive shortcomings the rest of the year. You can't magically sprinkle dust on this offensive line and make them something that they're not. So whether or not you want to throw the ball 60 times a game, or whether or not you want them to throw the ball more frequently on first down, or whatever it is you might want, the success rate is not going to be where it should be because, Gene, this offensive line stinks.
Okay. Yeah, it does. But no, one of the things you said there, I think, is on first down, you're not going to go, you don't have to throw out the baby in the bathwater. You don't have to throw every down. But I think what you can do is become less predictable a lot of these things. You mentioned that first down, Jeff, and this team has had no success at all. The last game, they ran it 18 times, 16 were non-gimmick runs. They had 21 rushing yards in those 16 first downs when they ran. You cannot continue to be 2nd and 9, 2nd and 8, 2nd and 10, and then all of a sudden you got 3rd and long. This is one of the worst teams in the country in 3rd down conversions. You know why? Because the average field position is 8.4 yards to pick up that 3rd down. You're not going to do that at all very consistently. So that's been the problem. I think they just need to be a little bit more creative, maybe a few more passing plays, safe passing plays, get something more positive in that, and make the defenses honest. So I don't think you need to completely change the system. He's done it a little bit by keeping a tight end a little bit more to help with pass protection, but I think you do a little bit more in the play calling to at least make that offense a little less predictable.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a fun debate to have, and it's a nuanced debate. It's not all or one or the other. I agree with elements of what Gene's saying. I would also say I just think that there are some things that are going to be literally fruitless because of this offensive line. And I would caution, you don't want to be a team throwing the ball 60 times with this offensive line.
Yeah, and like Gene said, there is a happy medium in between. I think the coaching staff got very conservative after what happened in those first few games, where when they did try to throw it on first down, all of a sudden it's 2nd and 18, or there's a turnover, or a holding call. They had so many holding penalties.
Yeah, I'll take 3rd and 6 over 3rd and 14.
Yeah, so that's kind of the balance. I think to your point, there's not going to be any silver bullet that fixes this. It's basically just different shades of gray. And I think right now they've won a couple games. They've minimized the big losses. They minimized the turnovers. That game they didn't give up any sacks. DeAndre didn't have any interceptions. The offense didn't turn the ball over once. They really won the turnover battle. The one fumble was on special teams. So I think that's kind of the approach they've been. Now, again, against better opponents like Miami, the second half of the schedule, they are going to have to force the issue some.
Do you think it's a sign, though, and I guess to Gene's point, do you think it's a sign that, hey, listen, they didn't give up a sack. Are they getting better in pass protection?
I definitely think they are. Not only Landon Dickerson helped a lot, but it's not just that. Other guys knew what they were doing. Some of the zone blocking schemes where they're passing guys off to one another, you didn't see the free rushers. You didn't see the complete breakdowns and whiffs that we saw in those early games. Louisville's not a great defensive front, but it didn't matter who they played early this season. They didn't know who to block half the time or what technique to use. They got a lot better in that area. Now, again, the competition is going to get higher. It's not going to be enough to just get in the way. They're actually going to have to do something, but it's a baby step.
Well, the next opponent is a far cry better than the one they just faced against Louisville. So we'll come back and preview, the Miami offense and the Miami defense and find out just what kind of team Florida State's trying to slay in this all-time great rivalry series. Maybe not equipped to play this game the way that we'd like to, but it's going to be played nonetheless. And we'll talk about what you're up against when we come back on the Warchant.com report.
It's football season in Tallahassee, and the only place to go for FSU apparel and merchandise is Garnet and Gold. Locally owned and operated by Seminoles for Seminoles for nearly 40 years. Garnet and Gold has the best selection of FSU merchandise in town, but what we really sell is tradition and passion to serve you, the true Seminole fans, at all 3 of our locations, West Pensacola Street, Killarn, and our flagship store across from Regal Cinema. Online at garnetandgold.com. Shop local and go Noles.
Welcome back to the Warchant.com report. Willie Taggart, it's his first time in the rivalry as a head football coach for Florida State. Obviously, he grew up watching, and he talked about the Miami Hurricanes this week.
One of the biggest rivalries in college football, and when I was growing up, that game pretty much came down to the national championship game for a while there. And again, I probably said it before, just remember when that week came on, we had a little league game. As soon as that game was over, we were all watching TV to watch the Canes and the Noles play, and it's one heck of a rivalry. You know, it's going to be physical. You're going to see some big hits, some big plays, guys flying around. It's a game you don't necessarily have to get guys fired up for. They understand the importance of this game, and you think about here in the state, this is kind of like where it starts when it comes to winning a state championship. It starts with this game here. So our guys understand the importance. I'm excited about it. This is why you signed up to come to a place like Florida State to play in games like this, and we're excited about it.
Willie Taggart on what it's like to be in the Florida State-Miami series, the Miami Hurricanes. Obviously having a better time running the football right now. Gene, they are a team that is averaging over 5 yards per carry, 200 yards per game. I think if you're Mark Richt, you don't have an elite quarterback on this roster, so you're going to want to create balance, and you're going to want to do that by running the football.
Yeah, and they've got a 2-headed monster going with DJ Dallas and the Homer kid, and they're both really good. And Dallas is your bruisers, 220 pounds, and then Homer's more of your home run hitter per se. You know, one thing you know about Mark Richt, when you go back even his Florida State day, he loves to have the run to set up that play-action passing game, so you can bet he's going to come out and try to establish the run with these 2 guys against Florida State, and that's going to be interesting because that's going to be strength against strength. Florida State very good against the run. So that's going to be a matchup to watch, and if he does at the play action, watch out for Jeff Thomas. He's their leading receiver in terms of touchdowns and big plays. He's averaging almost 25 yards a catch. He's a really fast guy, and with all those breakdowns Florida State's had deep in the secondary, you think he's going to run a few post routes between those safeties maybe this weekend? So watch out for that off the play action quite a bit this week. So very potent running game for Miami, kind of going back to what they used to do really well, and that's run the football to set up the pass.
I found it deeply troubling that Miami made the switch from Malik Rozier. I thought they should have rewarded that young man with undying and unwavering loyalty. They chose to go a different direction to N'Kosi Perry, and that could be bad news for us.
You're going to miss old Malik.
I was a big fan. I wish he could have stayed there for the next 6 years.
Yeah, it's a big change. I mean, it's a dramatic change, and it's interesting that it probably hasn't. I guess it kind of says how people felt about Rozier, but Miami hit during the offseason. Mark Richt stood strong behind Malik Rozier, said that he's not the most accurate quarterback, but he's our guy. He's made big plays when we need it. He's been in the battles. The question you don't know about N'Kosi Perry, and he's been more accurate. He looks like a more polished quarterback, even though he's just a redshirt freshman. What you don't know is how he would handle a close game, a tough situation. Since he's been playing, they steamrolled North Carolina last week. North Carolina just gave them the game.
6 turnovers will do that.
Was not even competitive. So he hasn't had to play in a game like a rivalry game, a game like with the athletes and the kind of pressure he's going to see. So I think that's going to be, to me, that's going to be the big question. I think N'Kosi Perry, no question, against weaker opponents is going to be a better quarterback than Malik Rozier. Rozier did come through when they needed him last year against Florida State. Perry, he did. He made the play. He had that drive when they had to have it.
No, I saw it.
Perry's never faced this kind of situation. So if the game is close and the game pressure becomes something to watch, I think you do have to see how he handles it. He's a young quarterback.
Let me stay with you for a second as we go over to the Miami defense. You know what we normally do, guys? We normally take a look at all the defensive numbers, and we'll tell you how that compares and contrasts. One thing we know, though, it will not matter who Florida State's playing. They're going to stop Florida State's rushing attack. So Miami's defense is going to do a good job of shutting down this run. They create turnovers. We saw 6 of them a week ago. I believe they're in the top 5 nationally yet again in most defensive stats. So early in the season, Miami looks to be fast. They look to be stout against the run. Everybody's stout against the run against Florida State. Your thoughts on what Florida State will be facing defensively?
One thing I do think that Florida State, you saw a little bit of in the second half of that game, was guys stepped up and made individual plays. And I think that's what you're going to have to see. Trey McKitty making that catch that was very well covered. Tamora and Terry coming through with a big 4th down catch. DeAndre Francois throwing the ball with conviction. You need to see these running backs. I think this is a big game for Jaquez Patrick. I think his physicality and the way he runs the ball and the way he can move the chains, I think this is a big opportunity for him. Florida State's going to have to run the ball effectively. Not just run it to run it, but make some gains. And I think Jaquez Patrick could be the key, unless Cam Akers steps up. He had a big game against them last year. Now, this is what you need to see guys step up individually, because it's not just going to come from the system. They don't have the offensive line to do that. Guys are going to have to make big plays.
One problem, Gene, is, and I did make the assumption that we're not going to be able to run the ball, but if you've watched Miami at all, and I have, they've been susceptible up the middle when the quarterback runs the ball for opposing teams. Even North Carolina was running the ball with their quarterback up the middle, sort of delayed draws, if you will. But I don't think we're in a situation where DeAndre Francois wants to take off and run right now. He's not the same runner he was before the injury. That's not his fault. It happens. He got hurt, but he doesn't have the same elusiveness or speed. So you can't take advantage of that necessarily. So if they can't run, even with the quarterback, how do you suppose we're going to move the football Saturday?
You're going to have to take your chances throwing the football. I mean, there's no, obviously, I don't see a scenario where Florida State's going to effectively run the football in this game. Now, like Tyra's point, maybe you get a few runs here and there, at least to somewhat keep them honest. But if Florida State can go out and run for 150, 200 yards, it's just not happening. Forget it. I will be shocked. I'm batting rounds for everybody if that happens.
Let's hope it happens.
Yes, I just don't see it. I do too, but I don't see that happen. So you're going to have to pass. And I think you can pass a little bit. Again, it's a huge if, but you continue to somewhat pass protect in this game. I think you have a shot to do it. One of the stats I read somewhere last year when Miami finished 1-3 in its last 4 games, teams completed over 70% of their passes against this team. It's vulnerable to a good team that can pass. I think we've seen DeAndre Francois, especially when he gets into a game and he's warmed up, he gets in a rhythm, he can throw pretty effectively, and they've got some talent at that wide receiver position. So I think there will be some opportunities to move the ball through the air, and I think ultimately you're going to have to do that. But of course, the downside is sacks, turnovers, all the downside that come with it, and Miami can take full advantage of that.
It's a conundrum that this is what coaches are paid well for, but you go into a game where you are eliminating a major aspect of the football game and you become that predictable before it ever starts. It's awfully hard. It's easy for us, all of us as analysts and fans, to say, spread it out, chuck it around the lot. Well, when a team knows exactly what's coming.
But what's the alternative?
I agree. It's
Third
it's
nine
tough.
every down.
A lot of trick plays, field position battles. Hope like hell
more double reverses.
Play to your defense and hope like hell they can keep it close. Maybe put pressure on the other team. But if you run a lot of risks out there, you're asking for turnovers. That place gets lively. Next thing you know, you're in deep trouble. We'll see. Doesn't sound like a very winnable game, does it, folks? That said, when we come back, we'll give you details on that game. And of course, what does it mean really, ultimately, right? It means a lot to us as Noles and how passionate we are about this rivalry. rivalry, anybody that's been involved in it, watched it from afar for a length of time, you know the impact it can have. But what impact does it have long-term, an individual game, especially year one with Willie Taggart? We'll come back and talk about that next on the Warchant.com report.
Hey, this is John in Greenville, South Carolina.
This is Eric from New Haven, Connecticut. My name's Jared. I'm from Mobile, Alabama. Justin from Oklahoma.
This is Ranye from Marshville, Georgia.
This is Terrell calling from Texas.
This is Josh from St. Louis, Missouri.
This is Roderick from North Carolina.
Wake up, Corey. Wake up, Aslan. It's Gibby. Still coming to you guys from East Village in Manhattan, New York City.
This is Kevin. I'm up here in Radford, Virginia.
It's Chris from beautiful sunny Phoenix.
Sam Wright, all the way from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Hey, this is Josh from South Dakota.
Just wanted to call and say love the show.
First of all, I want to start off by saying I love you guys' show.
I really appreciate the show.
Great show, guys. Really enjoy it.
I love the podcast.
Big fan of the show.
Keep up the good work, guys.
Keep up the good work. Love the show.
Wake up!
Wake up!
Wake up! Wake up! Wake up, Warchant!
Welcome back to the Warchant.com report. As a reminder, if you want more details on the game, go to the Warchant.com game day page for more info and a complete list of game watching locations throughout the country. All right, it's a huge game, always is. Doesn't matter the records, all that cliche stuff. It turns out to be true in a Florida State-Miami game oftentimes because the rivalry takes on a life of its own. When those two colors clash, you feel the emotions inside. The players no doubt do as well. But oftentimes I wonder, Gene, what does it mean long-term? What is the impact of a singular game? In this case, recruiting. Willie Taggart obviously may suffer through what might be considered a down year or a tough year this season, no matter how you look at it. But will this game, the result of this game, impact recruiting?
I think really you're looking at three scenarios here and how this plays out long term. I think first of all, FSU wins. We know it's glorious for Florida State. It's glorious for recruiting because it would do wonders, especially in South Florida. Miami's got one good home game this year. Every recruit in South Florida is going to be at this game. So for that to happen, it would suddenly say, wait, Miami's definitely not back, and maybe Willie Taggart's got something going on up there in Tallahassee. That's the upside. Okay, here's the downside. And again, I will say that the second scenario, a close competitive game where FSU loses, probably doesn't have a whole lot of impact. Honestly, Miami's a heavy favorite in this game. Probably doesn't hurt, especially if FSU actually plays pretty well. It might say, all right, maybe this team is starting to turn the corner a little bit. The other extreme is the blowout loss. That's where it can have a negative impact, I think, of recruiting. Not so much for 2019, but those juniors, sophomore, and freshmen, I know Michael Langston mentioned it on Wake Up Warchant, that can have a lasting effect because you can bet down there they're going to push the narrative. Miami's on the rise. Florida State under Willie Taggart's on the decline. You don't want to go up there. You don't want to come home and get embarrassed when you have to play Miami down here. So that is a scenario Florida State really needs to avoid for the long-term health of Willie Taggart in this program.
Any other side effects of a game that ends up in Miami's favor?
Yeah, I know. I agree with Gene. I think that goes into the play calling. And we talked about what approach do you take in this game. I think that's a reason why, if you're Willie Taggart, another reason why you want to keep this game as close as possible, not take too many chances, throw everything against the wall, trying to pull out a crazy win. I think you're going to see them try to play very good defense, control the ball on offense, not do too much because you don't want that avalanche, that 40-point loss. To Gene's point, I think it's another reason why, if I'm Willie Taggart, I'm being a little bit more conservative and trying to keep this game close.
See, I think we want it both ways here. We want him to spread it out and throw it around the lot. You're saying no? He's saying, can we get the game over with?
Ours okay with the 20-3 game, huh?
You don't think 20-3?
I just think you got to keep the game close. I think you got to do whatever you can to keep the game close. You can't expect that. Again, I think when you look early this season where Florida State got into trouble was when they tried to make too many big plays and they had too many negative plays. I think playing a conservative is working right now.
Wasn't this a game where you're going to really kind of feel those first couple series, feel it? If the defense is come into play and they can stop Miami in the running game, make them one-dimensional, and I think you're right, Ira. I think if Miami's consistently moving the ball up and down, you could be in trouble. You may have to have no choice if they're moving the ball against the defense.
All right, so 3 keys to the game. I mean, we do this every week. I think we've spelled out almost a doomsday scenario from the three of us. It's not going to be much of a mystery as to who we're picking. But if there is a way for Florida State to win the game, and I hate coming at it like this, but I'll just tell you mine real quick. I always believe that when you're the inferior team or you have a distinct disadvantage, and in this case Florida State does with their offensive line against Miami's defensive line, you got to get some help from the other team. You got to get some help from the team that's favored. And that does happen sometimes in rivalry games where emotions run high. Even for the team that's favored, sometimes you're expecting to do so much and you want so badly to exact revenge in this case. Miami hasn't beaten Florida State down there since 2004. You can bet they're licking their chops. Got to find a way to create some turnovers early, shift momentum, quiet that crowd, Put game pressure on them. Get them into the second half thinking about the history of this rivalry and how they have failed repeatedly for well over a decade at home against Florida State.
Yeah, you've hit on my number 1 and 2. Number one, I have, we need to see more backpack and less chain.
All right.
Because I think that's a big key right there. A lot of backpack, very good sign for Florida State, and both you and I are both pointed that out there. If you keep the game close, you got a fighter's chance, especially with a rookie quarterback going in there. They're expected to win almost a 2-touchdown favorite in this game. That game gets tight at the end. Maybe he tries to press and makes a big mistake in the game. So, you hope for that. And I think also, like I said before, you got to make Miami one-dimensional. If they can effectively run the football and set up that play-action game, it's going to be a long day for Florida State.
Ira, you want to add?
Yeah, I just would say on the secondary has to get cleaned up. And again, if you want to have hope that it can get cleaned up, is look at the offensive line. Because 2 or 3 weeks ago, the offensive line looked like they had no clue of what they were even trying to do. That's how the secondary looked this past game. They got confused in coverages. That has to get cleaned up. If that does, at least, again, you give yourself a fighter's chance. No busted 70-yard touchdown passes. The other thing is, I don't think it's just turnover luck when it comes to those fumble recoveries. Dontavius Jackson forced that fumble. That was a helmet on the ball, a vicious hit. That's how Brian Burns got that ball. DeKalen Brooks, great blitz, great tackle, forces the fumble. They don't recover it. They have to cash in on those plays. If they can cash in on those plays, it's not just a fumble luck thing. I think that really really has to be a top priority.
Yeah, I can't believe he somehow got that ball back, though, on the DeKalen Brooks play. That's nuts. And a lot of that's happened this year. All right, let's look at the games. Let's get through our picks, and then we'll give you a prediction for Florida State, Miami. Clemson's given 17 off of a scare against Syracuse at Wake. Who do you like?
Well, last week I went against Clemson, and you guys disputed me there. I'm just telling you, this is not the same Clemson team they could be without Trevor Lawrence. So once again, I'm going to take Wake to keep it close.
Wow. I'll take Clemson to win in a big, big rout.
I like Clemson, too. I would like to know if Lawrence is going to play. If he plays, I think there's no doubt.
I like him either way. Boston College is at NC State. NC State giving 4. BC, which started the year so well, has kind of stumbled a little bit. They struggled against Temple last week. NC State giving 4 against BC.
Do we know if that's a night game in the Wiz Palace?
Oh, the Wiz Palace at night. It's
tough
to play.
Because they've been drinking, they've been soaking up the water and beer all day. Do we know? Is that a night game?
I doubt it's a night game. BC, NC State. the
all right. Well, in that case, assuming it's a day
right.
game, I'm going to go with the Fighting Adazios.
All right.
How can they pass that up on prime time?
Yeah, I'll take BC plus 4.
I'm taking BC.
All right. Here we go. Notre Dame's given 5 at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech with a great bounce-back win after a devastating program loss the previous week. That was a nice win against Duke, but I still take Notre Dame going away against Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I'm with you. That Old Dominion loss is going to stick in my mind. I don't think I can ever take them.
Notre Dame looks like a completely different team now offensively.
Change quarterback. Yeah. That means a lot. So
I'm taking the Irish.
Alabama's given 34.5 at Arkansas. By rule, I don't do this. I'll take Arkansas plus 34.5. I think that Alabama becomes disinterested and starts to run the ball into the dead of the middle of the line in the third quarter, and just by virtue of a backdoor cover, Arkansas.
Well, it's funny. Last week they had it covered, and then 2 late, meaningless touchdowns. The old backdoor cover. You hate that, but I'm still going to take Alabama. Usually they cover. I'll do it here.
I watched the first quarter of the Arkansas-Texas A&M game, and Arkansas looked like garbage.
And yet lost by 7 to Jimbo's Texas A&M squad that was littered with 4- and 5-star athletes.
I'm going to put that on Jimbo and the quarterback turning the ball over. I'm going to take Alabama.
I think Alabama's up 28-0 at the end of the first quarter, and the final score is 42-14. And the next thing you know, I've got a cover there, guys. There you go. All right, Kentucky's at Texas A&M. Speaking of which, we've got a doozy.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? Here we go. Kentucky on the road is getting 5.5.
Go Stoops. All Kentucky.
That's a rooting pick.
They are back.
Yeah.
Kentucky is there.
Right.
Well, they were never there, but they're going to win.
It is amazing. I kind of want to fade Kentucky because they've done so well, but I'm not going to go against it. I'm going to go with the Stoopses.
I'll take the 5.5 for Kentucky as well. I think A&M wins a close one. Oklahoma's given 7.5 at Texas. I'll tell you what, Texas is playing a lot better football than they were. I'll take the hook and take Texas plus 7.5.
I don't like that hook, but I still don't trust Texas. I know they've looked better, but man, I watched all that Maryland game. It's hard to get that on my mind too, so I'm going to go with Oklahoma here.
They've subsequently bounced back with some good wins.
I'm with you, but I'm going to go against Herman. That's what I do. So
it's what he does. These guys, emotions get the best of these guys. All right, and finally, we've got to do it. I picked Texas there. I like Oklahoma to win a close one. FSU's at Miami. Last we saw is 12.5. It's been up as high as 13.5, somewhere in there. I've got Miami, unfortunately. I'll just say it now. 38-10, Miami beats Florida State.
The last time FSU was this big of an underdog against Miami?
Early 2002?
You got it. Nailed it. 13.5 underdog in 2002.
Wow, okay.
That was the wide left.
That was a close game.
FSU should have won the game.
Greg Jones ran wild, right?
That's right.
The game?
That's the game. Good memory, Jeff. So I'm going to say FSU is going to cover. I'm definitely not going to win. I'm going to go 27-17 Miami.
Boy, that's a win for Florida State if it happens.
I think it depends on where you get the line, whether or not they cover.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Florida State's gonna lose 35-23. I think it's
23 points. Well, that's an offensive explosion against Miami on the road. How about that? All right, well, these guys are more optimistic than I am, but thank you, as always, for watching. We'll hang in there, folks. That weight game still looms large. Hang in there. We'll come back and talk to you next time. Good job, Aslan, for Ira and Gene. I'm Jeff. Talk to you next time on the Warchant.com Report.
Primetime in football paradise. On November 9th, Florida State travels to South Bend, Indiana to take on Notre Dame. Make the trip and take the stress of planning off the table with a package from Game Day Excursions. From a yacht party through downtown Chicago to a pregame tailgate or transportation from Chi-Town to Notre Dame Stadium, Game Day Excursions has you covered. Head to GameDayExcursions.com to book your trip and be sure to use the promo code WARCHANT for a $10 discount. Check out GameDayExcursions.com.